Imagine this. You're alone in your room late at night. The house is quiet, too quiet, and then you hear it. A whisper. Your name, spoken by something that shouldn't know it. It's not the wind. It's not your imagination. It's coming from the mirror on your wall. Welcome to the story of the Whispering Mirror, a tale so unsettling you might think twice before looking into your own reflection again. This isn't just a ghost story. It's about a man named Daniel Harper, an ordinary guy who stumbled into something ancient, something evil, and paid a price he never saw coming. So sit back, turn off the lights if you dare, and let's dive into the nightmare that started with a $10 deal. Daniel Harper was 32, single, and a little obsessed with old things. He wasn't rich, just a warehouse worker from a small town in Ohio, but weekends were his escape. He'd drive out to flea markets, garage sales, anywhere he could rummage through forgotten junk. He loved the thrill of finding something unique, something with a story. One chilly October morning, he pulled into a dusty parking lot on the edge of town. The sign read Antique Market, but it looked more like a graveyard for broken dreams. Tables were piled with cracked dishes, rusty tools, and faded photographs of people long gone. Daniel wandered through the aisles, his breath fogging in the crisp air, until he stopped dead in his tracks. There it was, a mirror. Not just any mirror, but a tall one, maybe 6 feet high, with a wooden frame carved with strange swirling patterns. The glass was cloudy, scratched in places, but it had a weight to it, like it belonged in a mansion, not a flea market. The seller caught his eye. She was an old woman, hunched over in a faded coat, her hands trembling as she polished a brass lamp. "How much for the mirror?" Daniel asked. Her eyes flicked up, wide and nervous. $10, she muttered. "Take it. I don't want it here." He frowned. $10 for something this heavy. It felt off, but he wasn't one to pass up a bargain. He handed her the cash, loaded the mirror into his truck, and drove home with a grin. That night, he hauled it up to his bedroom. The frame creaked as he propped it against the wall. He wiped the glass with a rag, watching his reflection sharpen in the dim light. It looked good, he thought. A little creepy, sure, but good. He went to bed feeling satisfied. Around 2 a.m., he woke up. Something had stirred him. A sound. A whisper. It was faint, like a breeze slipping through the window, but his windows were closed. He lay still, listening. Then it came again, clearer this time. Daniel. His name. His heart skipped a beat. He told himself it was a dream, rolled over and forced his eyes shut. The next day, Daniel couldn't shake it. That whisper stuck in his head like a song he couldn't forget. He went to work, stacked boxes, joked with his co-workers, but his mind kept drifting back to the mirror. Maybe it was the house, he thought. Old places make noises. That night, he decided to test it. He stayed up late, watching TV in the living room, avoiding his bedroom altogether. Midnight passed. Nothing happened. He laughed at himself, feeling silly for getting spooked. Around 1 a.m., he climbed the stairs, flicked on the bedroom light, and froze. The mirror was there, same as before, but the air felt heavy, like someone else was in the room. He shook it off and crawled into bed. Then it came again. Daniel. Louder this time, sharp and raspy, like a voice fighting to be heard. He bolted upright, staring at the mirror. The glass reflected his bed, his face, the moonlight filtering through the curtains. But for a moment, just a fleeting second, he saw something else. A shape. Not his shape. It was taller, thinner, with no clear edges like smoke trapped in the glass. His stomach dropped. He yanked the blanket over his head, hard hammering, telling himself he was tired, imagining things. Morning came, and he felt ridiculous. Sunlight streamed in, and the mirror looked normal again. Just an old piece of junk, he thought. But that night, he couldn't ignore it anymore. He was brushing his teeth when the whisperer returned. "Look at me, Daniel." It wasn't in his head. It was real, coming from the bedroom. He dropped the toothbrush, hands shaking, and crept down the hall. The mirror stood there, silent and still. He stepped closer, peering into the glass. His reflection stared back, pale and wide-eyed. Then it changed. The face wasn't his. It was white as bone, with hollow sockets where eyes should have been, and a twisted smile stretching too wide. He stumbled back, tripped over a chair, and hit the floor hard. The face was gone when he looked again. Just his own terrified eyes stared back. He didn't sleep that night. He sat in the kitchen until dawn, clutching a cup of coffee, wondering what he'd brought into his house. Daniel knew he had to get rid of it. The next morning, he called in sick to work. His hands were clammy as he dragged the mirror out to the garage. He grabbed a hammer from his toolbox, raised it high, and smashed the glass. Shards exploded across the concrete, glinting in the light. He felt a rush of relief. It was over. He swept up the pieces, dumped them in the trash, and went back inside. That night he slept better than he had in days. No whispers, no shadows. But when he woke up, his blood ran cold. The mirror was back. Not in the garage, not in pieces, but standing in his bedroom, whole and perfect, like nothing had happened. He ran his fingers over the glass. Not a scratch. The whispers started again that night, louder and angrier. "You can't leave me, Daniel," they hissed. He tried burning it. The flames licked the frame, but when the smoke cleared, it stood untouched. He drove it to a dumpster 10 miles away, left it there, and sped home. By morning, it was back in his room. His friends noticed something was wrong. "You look like hell," his buddy Mark said over beers one night. Daniel spilled everything. The whispers, the face, the mirror that wouldn't go away. Mark laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, but Daniel's eyes were wild, desperate. "Come over," Daniel begged. "See it for yourself." That night, Mark stayed over. They sat in the bedroom staring at the mirror. At 2 a.m., it happened. "Mark!" The whisper wasn't Daniel's name this time. Mark jumped, spilling his drink. "What the hell was that?" he yelled. Daniel just pointed at the mirror. A shape flickered in the glass, tall and eyeless, its smile stretching wider. Mark bolted out the door, swearing he'd never come back. Daniel was alone again. He stopped going to work, stopped answering calls. He set up his phone to record one last time. The footage showed him sitting on the bed, staring at the mirror. At 3:17 a.m., a figure appeared in the glass. It leaned closer, its hand pressing against the inside of the mirror, like it was trying to push through. Then the screen went black. The next day, his sister came by. The apartment was empty. No Daniel, no phone, just the mirror, spotless and silent. She looked into it, and for a moment she saw him. Daniel's face, pale and trapped, mouthing her name. She screamed and ran, leaving the mirror behind. Nobody knows where Daniel Harper went. His sister never went back to that apartment. The landlord eventually sold off his stuff, but the mirror stayed. Some say it's still out there, sitting in a thrift shop somewhere, waiting for its next owner. Others think Daniel's trapped inside, a prisoner of whatever lives in that glass. Maybe it's just a story to scare kids at campfires. But if you're ever at a flea market and see a tall mirror with a carved frame, don't be too quick to take it home. You might hear your name in the dark. What do you think happened to Daniel? Could you face the whispering mirror? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're brave enough, hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories coming your way, ones that'll make you question every shadow in your house. See you next time, if you dare.